Good evening, a very late evening, and welcome to the weekly English shooting live stream. At least it's consistent and on the same day. So yes, welcome for all you regulars. You know what this is all going to be about, and you know what the deal is. For anybody new, thank you for joining. If you're watching this live, then you can use the message box, chat box below. Get involved, have your opinions heard, chip in. I'm always interested to see all sides of the argument. That's how we progress, that's how we learn, that's how we improve and even expand our own knowledge base. And of course, don't forget to hit that like button. It really does make a difference. It helps make use of the YouTube algorithms. It puts the video in front of more people, the channel in front of more people, and of course we're all about introducing as many people into the sport as possible. So with your help, by liking, by subscribing, by getting involved, even chats and comments help boost videos up. We can hopefully reach new people and get more people into this sport. So yes, a different start time this evening. I think last week was 8:30, now we've gone 9. Does 9 o'clock work for you? We talked about this last week. Let me know if you'd prefer an earlier time. I sort of like, let's just try 9 o'clock, see if all of you old bastards are gone to sleep yet, which I'm sure some of you have, but it's not, we've got to try it, right? It was certainly a lot less stressful for me. I had to didn't have to rush out of the office, didn't have to rush home, gobble down some dinner, and then get set up for the stream. So I certainly prefer 9 o'clock, but I'm not opposed to going to say 8:30 or 8, but I think later definitely works better. But yeah, I hope you've all had a fantastic week, a week filled of shooting. Of course, there is really only one topic that is on everybody's lips at the moment within the shooting community and shooting industry, and that is, of course, the lead ban and the report from the HSE. So important that I managed to very quickly get a video out last night. So if you want a more concise sort of highlights and key points of what's going on, then you can go and watch that video. It's sort of give you the highlights of what's going on with it. But I think this evening we're going to spend a lot of time discussing what you guys may have found already. It's a 227-page document, and I read something today from BASC that there's even more sort of subsidiary or additional documents, and it brings it up to like 400 pages in total. So I really haven't had time to be able to go through it word for word. Still haven't had time. So if there's anything specific that you think I've missed out, either from that video or even this evening, please get involved. Please raise any fears and also raise any questions you may have. There's been a lot of questions around this, a lot of uncertainties, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm aware of, some I don't. So maybe you can educate me, maybe I can sort of calm your fears down and pass on some information to you guys. And I will be going through I've done a couple of posts on the English Shooting Facebook page. Again, if you're not already following the English Shooting Facebook page, please go and find it. That's where all the new up-to-date news gets put out straight away. It can take 24 hours, 48 hours to get a video out, and that's if I'm not at a shooting show for the entirety of a weekend. So for more instant news and also more discussions, go and check out the English Shooting Facebook page and give it a like, because that also helps the channel grow as well. But I'm going to go through some of the questions that were on those posts, hopefully clear a few things up. Harry Johnson, 9 is a winner for me. 8:30 works for you. So yeah, later seems to work. Maybe 9 is a little too late. I was really umming and ahhing about it. I was like hovering over the 8 and then 8:30 and then 9. I was like, no, I want to sit down and enjoy my dinner for once, so I select 9. But 8 still gives me an extra hour. That's more than enough. Or 8:30 gives me an extra hour over the normal time. But we will settle down. We will get back into the normal routine. As well as the lead ban, the HSE lead report, we will be talking about the Northern Shooting Show, which was this weekend. Incredibly positive all round. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the general response and how the show felt, maybe even in comparison to another show this year. Neighbours is busy. They are doing a gun surrender scheme, so we're going to be talking a little bit about that, the pros, the cons, the benefits of doing that, and is it worthwhile doing? Is it not? And again, I would love to hear your opinions on that. And also the UK PSA. Some of you will know that I'm big into my practical shooting, and obviously follow the UK PSA, which is the sort of UK governing body for it. There are some fantastic new opportunities for training abroad with guns that we are unfortunately very limited in access to here in the UK. So we're going to be talking about those amazing opportunities. And in the last hour, there's been a bit of an update that has come out of Field Sports channel, or Field Sports Britain TV. They keep changing their name. I can't keep track of it. And basically their news is Plymouth and Devon and Cornwall. There has been some progress, and we've had the result of the first appeal, or more negotiation, that took place by somebody that had their guns seized by the police down there. And thankfully, with all the negative news that's going around at the moment, it's some positive news. So we'll be talking a little bit about that later on as well. So yes, lead. First of all, is there anybody here that comes from a scientific background? Because I haven't yet. I've gone through the highlights of what they're proposing to do, but what I haven't had a chance to do is really look at the science behind it. I'm also more of an engineer than a scientist, so if there are any scientific experts watching the stream that can chip in about the sort of categoric, factually evidence-based supported, peer-reviewed research that backs the theory of all this lead being out there in the countryside is doing damage, please chip in. I would love to hear your opinions on it, and get your expertise on the matter. I think to an extent we can. You don't know how long it took me to make the video that went out last night, because and probably you noticed for me it was far more factual based rather than ranty and ravey and necessarily shouting off my opinions. That's because I keep going round in circles. Do I think this is a good thing for the industry and for shooters? Absolutely not. Do I think it would be far better that things were left as it was in terms of an industry and a sports standpoint? Absolutely. But I'm not 100% sold on whether it's a good idea to continue putting that much lead into the outdoors, out into the field, out into the wildlife, where birds, wildlife, livestock can eat it. But I'm also not I'm not sold on the everything's going to die if we continue doing it. And people keep making very valid points that so I was speaking to somebody prior to the stream who said they are going to chip in, so or they're going to watch at some point, so if you're watching, you know who you are, and they made I think more detailed points of what a lot of people have said so far, which is lead is an everyday part of our lives. I think it was something like there's 20 million households. It's estimated like 7 million of them still have water supplied in some way by lead pipes. We all have lead flashing on our roofs, and funnily enough, I was parked by the garage ready to put the car in while I was on the phone, and I could see all the rooftops of the houses around us, and yeah, plenty of lead. So is it, what's the issue here, right? Is it the shooting of the lead, or is it lead? Because if it's shooting of the lead, why specifically shooting? And I know a lot of people are saying that this is a backdoor ban. Whether that's deliberate or a happy coincidence for some people, I don't know. But if it's about lead in totality, are we going to start stripping roofs? Are we going to suddenly have this mass upgrade of piping for waterways and you water into your homes? If lead is really absolutely that bad to be anywhere near water that could, that a little birdie could drink, we're going to have to start stripping stuff off of our roofs, because every single day, pretty much every single day of the year in England. Rain is running off of it into the soil, into the wildlife. So I keep flip-flopping. Is this just a backdoor attack on shooting? I would probably lean to yes. It's certainly an easy sell to most politicians. It's certainly an easy sell to most of the public, you know, in restricting shooting. You know, look at these shooters putting all this lead out into the environment, killing wildlife and killing livestock. Don't you think that, we should stop the shooting and stop all this ecological damage? It's pretty, you want to stop more people shooting? Yeah, okay, I don't like guns. So, yeah, I can see it from that. Is it actually going to do any good? There is if we take the you have to sort of work on assumptions, because that's what HSE has done overall. There's a hell of a lot of assumptions in this report. There's a hell of a lot of estimations, which does in some way like call into question the validity of it. Something so serious and something that has taken this far or this long to be released, and they're still basically saying there's some things we just don't know. And that's part of the reason as well that they have opened up this consultation, which again I will stress is very, very important to respond to. I know so many people are asking, well, what should I say? How should I submit it? I am planning on sitting down and filming me submitting a response. I'm going to have to caveat that massively, because you can only, you know, the organizations are, I believe, working fairly hard to get their suggestions out, but the NRA are saying like by July. You know, that's a good month and a half away. Is this still going to be fresh in people's mind? It's pretty bloody serious, but it should be continuously fresh in people's mind. But right now, people are alert to it. People are aware of it. Now is the time to strike while the iron's hot and all that. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do my response. Are they going to be the best responses possible? Probably not. Is the likes of the NRA and BASC far more qualified to be giving you advice on it? Absolutely. But I'm going to submit my responses. If you want to take any guidance from that when that video comes out, then please feel free, but I'm certainly won't be telling anybody to put the responses that I do. You can just use it as maybe a cross reference, and you really should. I think you should answer it honestly and how you think it should be answered. Ultimately, I don't think you should necessarily be told by anyone how to answer it, but the reason that they've asked for a consultation, they've asked for input, not necessarily just to give an opportunity for the community that it's going to affect the most to counter any points and maybe mitigate any bans or restrictions that come in because of it, but also they want to gather information, they want to gather data that they've been quite clear within the report is missing. So, you know, I've seen some people already saying that they're asking things like, you know, how many ranges are there in the UK? How many shots do you put down range? How many, you know, this do you estimate? How many of that do you estimate? And, you know, there is the law of averages, not necessarily the law of averages. What is it? It's the Derren Brown law of people. Basically, I think I use this on the channel quite a lot. But you ask 1,000 people how many balls are in a jar, the average of those 1,000 people's answer will be scarily close to the actual figure. So I think, in a way, this is sort of a scary thought, that HSE are doing that. Yes, there's going to be massive people that really over or underestimate it, but overall the average of responses is going to give them a very good idea on certain numbers. So you can go on and respond to that consultation right now if you want. I will put a link in the chat, prepared as always. It's on the wrong computer, so let's bring that up now. No, that's the wrong one. Here we go. So the main page, so I'll bring it up on stream for you guys so you know what you're looking at. So this is the main link to the report. So this is where they've released it. if you go down here right to the bottom, and I'll put the direct link to this, you've got the call for evidence public consultation. That's where you want to click through, but I'm actually going to give you the direct link to that. And then also you can go through and look at the report and annexes themselves, and the report itself. This is the consultation, 10 pages. I haven't had time to go through it at all yet, so it's fairly basic beginning information there, getting a bit about you, and then obviously it's going to go through and start asking specific questions. But let me just get that link for you. Please do go and have a look. Even if you don't want to go and fill it out right now, which I would recommend you do, please make a note to go back and go and hit up that consultation. But this is what everybody is talking about. This is the report from the Health and Safety Executive that were tasked in looking into the impact of lead, whether something needed to be done, and if there were any proposals that could be brought into place, or anything that they would suggest to mitigate the amount of lead going out there if it was harmful. And the overall summary, again, I haven't been able to drill into the nitty-gritty of the science of it and their findings in terms of what the damage is, but the best thing to do if you don't want to go and read 200 and something odd pages of it, is to go down to the conclusion, and I think this just says it all in terms of their stance. So for all uses of lead included in the dossier, the agency concludes that the use of lead shot and bullets pose a risk to the environment and or human health that is not adequately controlled and needs to be addressed at a GB level. This is what they are going to be putting forward to the government, right? There's no if, buts or maybes in that statement. They are saying it poses a risk and something needs to be done. And I think I think maybe the ship has sailed on the science, or maybe rejecting that statement. I think whether or not you agree with that statement, whether or not you think it's true, that is the stance that the government is going to take now. Lead is bad, it shouldn't be put out into the environment, and we need to do something. And I think what we're going to get into the argument, or let's be a little bit more positive, the discussion or negotiation we're going to get into is, what exactly are we going to do? What is going to be brought into place, and how is that going to affect the shooting industry? Now, again, covered from the video from yesterday, what they are proposing is a complete ban of the use of lead in any form for hunting. So if you are outdoors and you're hunting, and of course most of the time if you're hunting you're going to be outdoors, you're not going to be able to use any lead shot for game or for pigeon control. You're not going to be able to use obviously lead slug or buckshot. Not that they're particularly popular hunting rounds in this country. We don't have many turkeys or grizzlies. So basically lead cartridges, any cartridges with lead in it are going to go, and it's also going to include lead bullets. So everything from deer stalking, you're going to have to switch to a non-lead alternative, and the 2.2 shooters, people that go out bunny bashing, using 2.2 rimfire, you're gonna have to find an alternative. Airgun shooters, if you go and pest control with an airgun, doesn't matter if it's an FAC airgun or a 12 foot-pound, if you are shooting at something, if you are hunting and you're outdoors, which you most likely will be, you will have to find a non-lead alternative. The same is pretty true for the sport shooting. So sport shooting, they, I think, really would like an outright ban, but there's a certain number of mitigating circumstances, mainly that sport shooting usually takes place in a very confined space, especially at ranges with backstops at the likes of Bisley. It's not being really strewn out there in the normal wildlife in that sense. Okay, playgrounds, I think the losers of the sport shooting side of things are going to be the clay shooters. I think in a way, fortunately, they have the best alternatives available. I'm not saying that steel is better than lead. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the best alternative in terms of price, this, that, and the other. But there are a number of non-lead alternatives available from for sport shooting, for clay shooting, and it should be a relatively easy transition for the clay shooting community to move to it. Of course, you've got to think about the international sporting arena. You know, if we're used to using still shot here in the UK, it does shoot differently. Okay, everybody in the UK is going to be on a level playing field, so you know the competitions are still going to be pretty fair. Everyone's using, you know, the same materials, let's say, for their clay shooting. But there will be an effect if you go abroad and you're using steel and your competitors using lead. That is naturally going to give it's going to give a slight advantage to the lead shooters, just because of the way that lead operates within shotguns. Of course, the game shooters are arguing that steel doesn't kill as cleanly, and it's not actually as humane. I know, again, there's so many different counters for that, but I think clay shooting will get affected the most because they shoot over much larger areas. It's much harder to contain the lead within those areas compared to that of a rifle range where you're shooting into the backstop. And actually, the majority, I think it's something like, you know, a good 90% of the lead can be recovered from the backstop with no issue at all. The other saving grace for sport shooting is they recognize how important it is to have consistent, accurate ammo for competing. Now, a couple of people gave me some shit for saying, oh, it doesn't matter, accuracy doesn't matter when you're shooting a deer. And of course, that's not what I meant. I mean, it matters less. You know, when you are shooting at, you know, the 10 ball targets with a 2-2 rimfire, and you know, millimeters can mean the difference between a winning and a losing score. You know, that's when accuracy is ultimately critical within your competitive arena. With a deer, you know, you're not talking about millimeters of accuracy that you acquire. You're trying to hit a heart. As long as the accuracy is within the grouping of a heart, you should still be able to take down that deer cleanly and, most importantly, humanely. So the accuracy, it still matters, but it is less critical overall than sport shooting. HSC has recognized this and basically looked up and said, yeah, the alternatives aren't available. Unfortunately, they don't seem to think the same for 2-2 rimfire in hunting and airgun pellets in hunting as well. They seem to say that, you know, the alternatives are there. They're everyone's already ready to switch. There is no feasible alternatives, right? And again, the gentleman that we're speaking to before the stream raised actually a very interesting point about airguns. Moving to non-lead alternatives, they will be lighter. So within the UK, any airgun under 12 foot-pound, you don't need a license to be able to own, which means that the majority of airguns out there are sub 12 foot-pound. Well, you start using lighter ammunition, then you're gonna, to get that full 12 foot-pounds, you're gonna want to turn the airgun up. So let's say you're using non-lead alternatives for hunting, but you also take that air rifle to a range to shoot bits of paper, and you start using lead. Well, your airgun is going to be, if you've got it tuned for non-lead alternatives and suddenly you start putting lead through it, it's going to be over that 12 foot-pound. The other issue is, what ammunition are the police then going to use to chrono your air rifle? Because again, if you have it, if lead pellets are still legal, they're still available to buy for sport shooting, and people are still using them and in competition and at ranges, but you have people that have their guns tuned to non-lead alternative because they're hunters. If the police get hold of that gun and they want to chrono it to make sure that it's under 12 foot-pound, and they put a lead pellet in it, which is far denser, far heavier, it's going to push it over 12 foot-pounds and potentially land people in very hot water. Now, this problem does already exist because people tune their guns, especially in serious competitive shooting with air rifles. They tune their gun to a particular pellet, and all it takes is to put a beefier, heavier pellet in there as the police, and it may creep over. So the issue with non-lead alternatives is that the variation is going to be that much bigger. That's why most commercial air guns are tuned to about 11.5 foot-pounds, just to give that margin of error when using other pellets for chrono. But with the differential between non-lead alternatives and lead pellets, there's going to be a lot of people that could potentially unwittingly have a gun that is capable of discharging a pellet over that 12 foot-pound. They then have a firearm, and as the law has it, you're in possession of a firearm without lawful authority, that's 5 years in prison. Thank you very much. Don't pass go, don't collect £200. The other big question that a lot of people have been asking is the MOD, and I think quite rightly. It was like, well, are the MOD going to switch away from lead if they're doing this complete outdoor ban of the use of lead? Or certainly, and it's not a complete outdoor ban, it is for the hunters, unfortunately, but for sport shooters, it's there are going to be no one really knows exactly what's going to happen yet. There's a number of proposals around it, but it's leaning towards not an outright ban, licensing, further regulations, further controls, and of course, the MOD, like with everything, get complete carte blanche and get complete exemptions. Coming from the electronics industry, it's one of the more well-known exemptions within the regulations around lead. So lead solder was banned a number of years ago now, and the MOD gets an exemption to be able to use it still. That's because lead solder is absolutely amazing. It's so easy to work with. Don't huff on it too much. I'd recommend that, but it's so easy. It flexes. It's not brittle. It melts and solders just beautifully. I've never found a non-lead solder that solders in any way, shape, or form the same way as lead solder. And somewhere laying about the house is this old little tube of lead solder, and I will not throw it away or sell it for love nor money. Right? It is. It's my ultimate backup solder, just in case there's a really tricky bit of electronics that I can't get to solder properly with non-lead solder. So I'm just trying to find the bit about. Here we go. So I think it was under the scope. This is the problem. It's like I've read so many sections of this, but because there's so many sections, it's incredibly difficult to remember where it is and find. But for anybody asking about whether the military is going to be caught up in this, the focus of this Annex 15 report is on civilian use of ammunition only. Police and military use are outside the scope defined by DEFRA. So, another interesting point that a lot of people have made: how many rounds comparatively is the MOD putting down range? And the sort of rounds the MOD are going to be putting down range are going to be fairly significant. So, in proportion, what proportion does the civilian use of ammunition make up of the total lead that is dumped out into the countryside? And bearing in mind, people might get a bit of a tiz having a 1,000-acre game shoot and putting lead all along that. Well, Salisbury Plains is pretty fucking big. That is a huge expanse of land, a huge amount of wildlife on the Salisbury Plains, huge ecological systems, and the military will still be bombarding the shit out of it with their exemption-led ammunition. So what I would like to know in terms of actually how effective this is going to be, what proportion does civilian use actually make up, right? Because if it's like 10% of what the military use, then it's like, what's the bloody point? Another interesting, and I hadn't thought of this, again, credit to who I was speaking to prior to the stream. You want a quick idea of how much lead is being put into the countryside, let's say. Okay, this is just going to be clay shooting, and this is just one clay shooting or clay pigeon manufacturer. But Laporte say that they make 370 million clay targets per year. If you average it and say that every one of those clay pigeon targets is shot with a 25 gram load cartridge, then you're looking in the region of 9 to 10 million tons of lead shot just at Laporte's targets. That's just Laporte's targets, right? And then obviously we've got other clay pigeon manufacturers. So I think the number that he said was like 700 million tons of lead every year go like across the world. And when you start to see numbers like this, you can begin to believe it. Again, I still don't know if that's a bad thing. This whole thing that, lead is inert. It doesn't react when it's there. Yes, it can poison waterways and you don't want to be drinking some lead water, but it sits there. It oxidizes and then doesn't react with anything. The carbon footprint of the alternatives, the way that the alternatives react with the soil and when they're out in the environment, is that going to be even worse? Are we going to go, oh great, no lead, all of the issues with lead being out there in the countryside are solved? But actually now we've discovered that the way that copper reacts with some minerals in the ground, that it produces this far more deadlier sort of side effect, this far more deadlier toxin that's going to kill far more wildlife. I don't know, but there is just shot at Laporte targets 9 to 10 million tons of lead being used. So the sport industry is, that's not including all the hunting, the game shooters, the other clay target manufacturers, the people that down the range, people on Bisley long range shooting, all that and the rest. But MOD are still going to continue using it. There's not going to be a restriction on them. And something again to clarify, as we've already covered, this is only the scope of this report, and these proposals are only around the outdoor use. Now again, I keep flip-flopping. I can't make my mind up whether, like, are they gonna just leave indoor shooting alone? It might not be in the scope of this report, but I mean, if I was the government and I was taking the hardline approach of lead is bad, we're going to ban it all outdoor use. Well, if you want it to be completely effective, and they talk about this a lot, if for complete effectiveness, you can't have any loopholes, right? You can't have any way of getting hold of lead shot or lead cartridges. The police have a bad enough time or hard enough time catching like real hardcore criminals. Never mind, Farmer Bob out in his field trying to shoot a few rabbits with some lead pellets. That's not enforceable, especially it may be banned and illegal to do so outdoor hunting. But if they have indoor sports shooting, well, you become an indoor sports shooter, don't you? You then can buy all the lead pellets you want, and if you're on your own land and you want to hunt at some rabbits or take some pigeons or squirrels or whatever, who's going to know that you've slipped a lead pellet into your airgun and fired it at a squirrel, right? Unless they actually catch you lead-handed, that needs to be a patch. They catch you lead-handed, ready to fire that lead pellet. No one is ever going to know. It's not enforceable, which in some way is, if they're taking this line that indoor sports shooting is not going to be affected, then great. But I can't see it staying that way. I can't see them allowing the whole lead market to continue under this indoor sports shooting guys, when we all know that a lot of outdoor shooters are still going to go and buy that ammunition and go and use it, even if it's naughty to do so. Of course, shooters are law-abiding. Shooters also don't like nonsense. They don't like bullshit. So if you put enough bullshit in front of them, they're, you know, like, look at long barrel pistols. You're going to ban my pistols, are you? Okay, I'm going to bullshit all over that. Just add a coat hanger, add a long barrel. It's a rifle, mate. What are you talking about? So yeah, shooters always find a way. Very innovative, very clever at finding, not necessarily finding ways around things, but maximizing the law to its best potential. So yeah, it's good that it doesn't cover the scope of indoor shooting, indoor sport shooting. That would be my first question if I was them trying to ban it and have an effect. It's not going to be effective if there's still a market for this lead, which then brings into the likes of lead licensing. Now, lead licensing is suggested as a two-tier thing, either licensing the person to be able to use lead, and I don't know exactly how that would work. I would imagine it would have something to do with national governing bodies. So for myself, you'd have to go to the UK PSA and say, do you think I'm a serious enough competitor to give me a lead license? Because, you know, I'm shooting nationally, I'm shooting abroad, I need to be able to shoot that. I need to be able to shoot lead ammunition because it's the best stuff that we can get. Or is it going to be a central lead license department that is going to review every single application? The other side of lead licensing is going to be premises. They will potentially license a premises for lead to be used there. Now that, I think, this is why I keep flip-flopping. That I don't think is necessarily a bad idea, and I think would do a lot more than coming after the shooters individually and making the shooters themselves go out and get licenses or exemptions. If where they are going to be using that lead ammunition conforms to all of the new measures and restrictions that they're going to put on lead shooting sites, then why do you need to restrict the shooter? So, you know, they're talking about better bullet traps. They're talking about making sure that, you know, water runoff from ranges isn't contaminated and that it's contained, and that all of these new measures that ranges will have to abide by in order to operate and have lead ammunition there. Just do that. I think that could be a really good go-between, and I can't necessarily disagree with it. I think some of the ranges in this country sometimes, there's a lot to be questioned in terms of their material handling and maybe policies around lead. So going around and making sure that they're not causing a small ecological disaster in the local area that range is in, fine. Yeah, of course we don't want to be polluting. Of course we don't want to be having a negative impact on the environment where we are shooting. I just don't know what licensing the shooter is going to do, especially if it is available on the market and still legal to use. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? How do you see this playing out? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Is there anything you think I've missed? And I'll go through your comments and see what you guys have to say. Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about the cost of it, have we? Manny Gill, if I was to get my barrels steel proofed, who would bear that cost, as it was not my choice to stop using lead? Well, the proof house must be going ka-ching at the moment. Like, the amount of people that are going to want to get their barrels steel proofed. I mean, it's hard enough getting a barrel proof there at the moment. They've already got a backlog, so that's going to be even more. Of course, it's going to be the shooter. It's going to be the shooter that picks up that cost. I mean, I guess it's because they're not taking the gun away from you. You could sell it on. Again, if nobody else can use lead, then why would you be able to sell it? You're not going to get market value for it. Yeah, that unfortunately is just one of the areas of the kick in the dick of this report, and the kick in the dick of banning lead. Yeah, shooters are going to have to pick up that cost if you want to get your barrels proof of steel. Daniel, how was the show and the response to the reflex? So we will be talking about the Northern Shooting show. It was, well, let's talk a little bit about it now. So I didn't get to see that much of the Northern Shooting show, but what I did get to see was very, very positive. It was, and I'm sure the organisers will completely disagree with me, given I know the absolute heartache they've gone through over the previous few years, but it's the first show that I've gone to that has had no feeling or remnants of COVID. Absolutely none. It didn't feel to be affected by it. I know it was shut down for 2 years, but it was like, the British shooting show, I still think, yes, there was all that furore about the ticket prices, the paying for parking, but it was definitely quieter. There were definitely more open spaces, more empty stands, and it felt, whether that's specifically because of COVID, I don't know, but it felt like a backward step, most likely due to the effects of COVID and not running the show for 2 years. The Northern Shooting show felt like a step forward. It felt bigger and better, with more stuff to do than ever before. And I think the stats, they were saying there were 33% of visitors were new to the show, the first time visitors. So it felt packed. Like, usually the Northern Shooting show, because it's over a huge showground, you don't get so bunched up with people. But in the halls, there were some points where you just couldn't move. So very positive to see. Of course, the Northern Shooting show was sold. It's changed owners. It's now owned by the same people that run the game fair. That I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It's a much bigger company. They've got much more, say, resources, and so far, so this year was sort of the old owners, but yeah, I hope it doesn't get more gamey. I hope it doesn't get more countryside. One of the reasons I like the Northern Shooting show is because it's still so varied. You've got practical shooting stands there. You've got usually airsoft stands there, air guns, shotguns, rifles, and even on the clay line. Yes, you can go and shoot a £20,000 clay gun, or you can go and shoot a 200 quid pump on the NTSA stand, so, or a black powder gun. So yeah, the Northern Shooting show was, from what I saw, was very, very good. The Maglo stand was very busy on the first day. Sunday was a little quieter, and anybody that did come and stop by the stand to say hello, thank you. It was great talking and meeting you, shaking your hands, and even just saying hi. So yeah, do appreciate everyone that did stop by. And in terms of the reflex has been received very well, especially from the American from across the ponds. The American seems to really like it. I forgot to bring one to show you guys, but if you were on the stream last week, you would have seen it. It's the world's first self-collapsing caddy. Very, very compact form for a multitude of different uses. Not all are sporting. And at the show, there were a number of people that sort of like, right, what's this reflex thing then? And you hold it up and you pull the cartridges out, and they go, I'll take two. It was an instant seller for some people. So yeah, very happy with the launch of Reflex, very happy with Northern Shooting show, and as I always do, I recommend getting your tickets for next year and going. You will have a fantastic day out. It's just a shame now that I'm usually on a stand for these shows and I don't get to go and enjoy it as much as possible. Bob Fife, are all PCPs going to get converted to banging out BBs, the 22 LR with steel bullets? Maybe we will get 22 ballistic tips. So 22 is, again, one of the areas of lead ammunition that is going to be very hard to replace cost effectively. Yeah, there's loads of replacements and alternatives available on the market already, but you know, they're like 5 times the price. And one of the things about 2.2 is that it's cheap. People use it for like training rifles out in America because the ammunition's so much cheaper. And, you know, that's why disciplines like mini rifle or IPSC mini rifle is so attractive, because, you know, you can go and do a whole match with 300 rounds. You know, that's like, even the most expensive ammunition that you would use, it's like 30 quid's worth of ammunition. You go and shoot 300 rounds of, you know, 12 gauge, or, you know, with mixing some buckshot and some slug in there, it gets a hell of a lot more expensive than that. They've come on leaps and bounds with FAC air slug, so if it's banned, all the R&D will be will have been done for nothing. Bloody silly. Bullfire also metal detect, and you would not believe the amount of lumps, and I mean lumps of lead I find every time I go detecting. So are they going to clear the UK countryside before the ban? No, because again I keep flip-flopping. It's just very much, I don't know, as a shooter, it felt your instant assumption is that we're being targeted, right? They're trying to ban us. That it's not about banning lead, it's about banning shooting. It's about making it as expensive as possible, making it as hard to get into the sport as possible. And sometimes it's very hard to see away from that. Are we being blinded by, you know, that level of thinking, or does it genuinely need to be done? But if it genuinely needs to be done, all the lead on roofs, all the lead in pipes, all the clumps of lead that metal detectors find in their fields, what are they going to do about that? Fishing is and has been lead-free for a few years now. Yes, this report doesn't cover fishing. Interestingly, one of the differences, so in the video last night, there's the EU reach, which is covering the EU, and then the UK reach, which is covering the UK. The UK reach was created after Brexit to continue what basically EU reach was doing, but we have autonomy. It can be deviated and changed based on, you know, our domestic differences. And fishing is one of the areas that, unlike the EU reach, the UK reach is not focusing on, and this report is also not focusing on. This is purely about lead shot. So the regulations that have been in place for lead weights and the use of lead in fishing are probably going to remain exactly the same. And again, talking to other people, from what I understand, there's been little regulation around fishing in the EU, so they've had to bring in something, and what they're doing is an outright ban. Whereas in the UK, there has been regulations and restrictions to some extent for a longer period. So they've gone to look at potentially banning it, and they've gone, well, hang on a minute, we've already got all these restrictions and regulations, and these have been working absolutely fine. Why is a ban needed? And I've gone, okay, then all right, fair enough. Whereas obviously for shooting, there's, you know, apart from wetlands, apart from shooting waterfowl, there you know, there's no regulations on what ammunition you can use and whether it has or hasn't got lead. Ian Hodgson, lead is a known neurotoxin, and young developing brains are susceptible to its effects. A search on Medline will give a massive number of papers on the medical effects. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should bring back lead paint and as children we should be sat there licking it. This is why I honestly don't know. I haven't had enough time to really take it all in and form a proper, let's say, educated opinion on it all. I know lead is bad. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't knowingly go out there and eat lead. But that's not what's happening, right? The whole thing about lead shot game. Well, you know, I know 90-year-old shooters that have been eating lead shot game all of their lives. Like a disproportionate amount of lead. They are country folk through and through. They are on a game shoot 2 or 3 times a week during the season, and their larder is full to the brim of lead shot game meat. And they're like 80, 90, 100 years old. You know, like that's not causing an issue for them. So is that really that much of a problem? I don't think so in terms of the in terms of that level of consumption. The big push for game meat, and this is why things get a bit with BASC, is markability. You know, being able to market the game. All the time there is lead in there, people will be put off of it because you don't want to necessarily go out of your way to eat lead. And also various regulations about the food in the supermarkets. So, you know, there's massive money to be made in marketing game and getting more people eating game. And of course, that's going to be easier if you haven't got that question around lead on it. You know, my point with, yes, it's a neurotoxin, yes, it's damaging. What does shooting a clay disc into a field lead to? How does that lead to somebody congesting it and, you know, having, you know, young brains melted by the neurotoxins that you've released shooting at a clay disc into the sky? You know, unless a child is sat underneath the path of the shot with their mouth open, you know, yes, of course, it seeps into the soil, seeps into the water, that gets into the water systems, things like that. So that's what you want to stop. The lead sat there in the field ain't going to do shit. So, you know, it's only the runoff that potentially needs to be controlled. Well, there are measures to control that. Why does it need to have a ban? What about air rifle shooting? Want to get into that too. I think we've covered airgun shooting. I'm not aware of non-lead pellets, but I have been out of the airgun loop for years. Yeah, there's certainly not a large selection, I know that. Bob Fife, no lead-free pellets as yet. So, you know, I thought there were some alternatives to it, but if there's none, then, well, yeah, you aren't. This is why it feels like an attack on shooting, because by banning the use of lead pellets in hunting, you are banning air rifle hunting, like outright. If you can't get the ammunition for it, well, then it's banned. Another point on even the air guns, and I seem to be focusing a lot on the air guns because I think the airgun shooters are going to have the hardest time of it. Far less, if any, substitutes for lead out there. They will be horrendously expensive. They are not going to perform the same way. There's all the potential legal issues with the 12 foot-pounds, as we've discussed. So I think the airgun shooters are going to have the hardest time of it. And actually, when you look at it, the airgun shooters are going to have the hardest time of it, but they contribute the least, right? How light is an airgun pellet, right? You take one shot from an airgun compared to one shot with a 12 gauge shotgun. It's like a disproportionate amount more lead in a shotgun cartridge. And, you know, so matey boy goes out rabbiting and gets 20 rabbits, right? 20 airgun pellets. Like, what is the weight of a typical airgun pellet? Let's just go just airgun pellets. Let's go pointed for hunting. Nobody's got any weights. Right. Let's go some super points. No weights. And they're 177, and that's the thing. You imagine a 177 pellet compared to a shotgun cartridge. 0.94 grams. So let's just round that up to 1 gram, right? You go out shooting with a 28 gram load. For every shot you take, it's equivalent to 28 airgun pellets, right? So why are we even worried about air gunners going out there and using lead pellets, right? What they make up is infinitesimal compared to that of, you know, a rifle bullet, a shotgun cartridge. You know, it's like they want to reduce, you know, the main aim is to like reduce the amount of lead put out into the wildlife to about reduce it by 90%. I think by banning lead shot with game shooting, banning lead shot for any hunting, banning lead bullets for hunting, and leaving the airgun pellets, I think you would still be able to achieve 90%. It's, you know, it makes up 1/25. That, you know, comparatively in terms of percentage, you're talking, what's that, like 7.5%? Okay, more people do air guns, but, you know, you go on a typical game day, you will be shooting, you know, at least 100 cartridges. Depends how good or bad you are. 100 cartridges, does that sound about right? Maybe even more. You know, you go out for a hunt with an air gun, you're not going to be going anywhere near 100 pellets. And again, that 100 cartridges is, you know, a day on the pigeons, right? You know, you can easily shoot 100 cartridges a day on the pigeons. That 100 cartridges at a 28 gram load is going to be, that doesn't seem right. Yeah, 2.5 kilos. Well, nearly 3 kilos of lead. Is that right? 100. Yeah, it's going to be 2.8 kilos of lead, right, in 100 28 gram cartridges. Like, how many airgun pellets is that? It's just like, so it just really feels like the air gunners are getting the real shitty end of the stick with this one. Probably the most affected area of shooting that contribute the least to the amount of lead out there in the environment. James Luke, hey, these rules don't sound that bad. Lead is quite bad for animals from what I've read. Again, like, I need some time to convince myself either way. If it really is with preventing an ecological disaster, then I can see these restrictions more, you know, that are more stomachable. But will FAC barrel liners be available to shoot steel pellets / slugs without wear and tear? Again, this is something that a lot of people, I think it's actually, well, they've just renamed. So the gun shop, TGS Outdoors, they've now renamed to, I think it's Proof House TGS. They've done a lot of testing around steel shot, steel barrels, whether most guns can take them. BASC have put out a lot of information about this, so I'd go rummaging on their YouTube channels, on their Facebook pages, to find more information out about it. Again, luckily I'm predominantly a sports shooter. I know it's selfish, but predominantly I'm a sports shooter, so I should be able to continue using lead. Having to convert my guns to steel proof isn't something that I think I'll have to worry about. And, you know, my silver pigeon that I may have to start shooting steel shot out of for clays, well, you know, that's a fairly modern gun. It will take it. A lot of the reports that I've seen is that steel doesn't wear as much. It doesn't. It's more older guns. It's more, say, vintage or antique guns. That's where you get the real issues, or maybe more delicate, you know, old English side by sides and over and unders. But most modern guns can take it without issue. That looks fun. Regarding shooting, particularly if we are training with steel and then we shoot steel in comps, if we are training steel and then we shoot steel in comps, will we really be at a disadvantage? Won't we just adapt? Absolutely. And this is what I was saying on a national level. So for national clay comps within the UK, everybody's going to be in the same boat. If they all have to use steel shot, they're all training with it, they're all competing. So everyone's using the same equipment. It's a level playing field. The issue is international competition. And that's not the only issue, but within international competition, you will then be competing against people that are using lead. The other issue is not all sport shooting can use still shot. So for IPSC, we shoot a lot at still targets, right? Still shot versus a still target is not something that you want to experience. Ricochets are probably not exaggerating too much, pretty lethal. It is dangerous to shoot steel plates with steel ammunition, especially as the so the rules on how close a target can be, or a steel target can be to a competitor at the moment, is 5 meters. You're a braver man than I am if you want to stand 5 meters away from a steel plate and shoot some steel shot at it. You will be absolutely peppered. So yeah, it's not just yes, in principle, for disciplines that can make that switch will be on a level playing field within the UK, but not every sport can transition to it. Not every sport can use it, and also we want to look at the international market and international, the international competitions. Heppy, got a good supply of leaded solder. Please share. The questions are ridiculous, for fuck's sake. Who has access to the info they want? You can still find real 60/40 lead solder if you hunt around for it, places like eBay and Amazon. Guess what I'm going to be doing after the stream, because it's one of those things. That was another question as well that people were asking about it. Like, are lead cartridges suddenly going to be banned? Now, I happen to have some proper old school. It's not the most interesting one. Where is it? I think I have some paper cartridges. Let me, bear with me. Oh, it's not paper, but I have, for any let's say more mature shooters out there, you might recognize this. Come on, focus on me. So Ely, where is it? Ely Maxim. Ely, what is it? Maximum. Waterproof, high velocity, long range. I mean, I remember, so these were I've never shot any of these, and I don't intend to. So the cartridge belt, I don't know if I've told you guys, I've told you about the knives, but the cartridge belt that you can, if I lean, no, you can't see it, where is it? Just about there in shot. Where is it? There. Is my granddad's, my late granddad's cartridge belt. And I mean, the earliest memory I have of that cartridge belt is probably 5 or 6. So those cartridges are old, right? I don't want to get rid of them. I have no intention of using them. I just want them to sit there because, they remind me of my granddad, and what's a cartridge belt without cartridges in it, right? And those are cartridges that he would have gone out there in the field and potentially used or loaded into a gun to go hunting with, right? And that's, there's sentimental. So I don't want to get rid of those. And what a lot of people are saying is people that collect ammo, people that have ammo mementos like that may be sentimental, will you have to get rid of it? Absolutely not. HSE and UK Reach are not worried about lead cartridges sat there on a shelf, right? Because all the time that they're sat there on a shelf, they're not out there in the wild, right? They're not there amongst the wildlife. They're not causing a potential ecological problem. So collectors will be absolutely fine. They are not banning lead ammunition. That is not what is happening. They are proposing the banning of the sale of lead ammunition for certain purposes, and they are proposing the banning of the use of lead ammunition for certain purposes. So it's not going to become a prohibited item, lead cartridges or lead ammunition, overnight. If you've got a slab of ammunition it will just be illegal to use it. So yeah, that's also why they're offering buybacks. Mainly, I think they're saying to encourage people to move away faster. The rate at which cartridges are going up, there's probably some good money to be made there, stocking up on a load of lead cartridges and then selling it to HSE. But the buyback for me is more of is to remove the argument of, hang on a minute, I've got 5,000 cartridges sat out in the shed, I'm going to be buggered if I'm going to throw them away. I'm going to continue using them. So in forcing you to move away from lead, they have to offer the option for you to dispose without losing money your current lead cartridges. But if you want to sit and hold on to them, absolutely fine, you can. There's going to be, from what I've read through this report, there's absolutely no issue in being in possession of lead ammunition. Even when the ban comes in, it will just be unlawful to sell it or use it for certain purposes. In Hodgins, go on PubMed, and there are over 49,000 publications on the toxicity of lead in humans, plants, algae, and fish. So yes, I can see where the regulation is coming from. Fair enough. Again, if there is a problem, we need to do something about it. What we need to do is have a discussion about what's done, and not be dictated to, and work with each other. This is BS. We shouldn't be giving those morons an inch. So of course we can't talk about this lead ban without going back to the now infamous voluntary transition away from lead, or obviously, as the title of the stream says, the not so voluntary transition away from lead. Now, again, I can start to see things from both sides. BASC knew this was coming, right? They knew long before they let up to any of us, which is a common fucking thing from BASC, right? BASC love to do that. They loved, we know something you don't know. What? Well, we're not going to tell you, but we're going to do a load of shit and you can figure it out. They saw this coming. They knew that this was coming. And I think what they tried to do with the voluntary transition from lead is get ahead of it. Potentially kickstart the industry into overdrive, finding alternatives to sort of break the bad news to us and get people already in the mindset that lead was going to go. But the way it was executed was absolutely atrocious. And in terms of any effect that it has had, well, okay, again, I can cut them some slack because of COVID. COVID had a huge impact on the progression of non-lead alternatives. Of course, we got to remember that BASC majorly got scolded by the cartridge manufacturers. They looked up and said, oh yes, we will transition away from lead in 5 years. And the cartridge industry said that's impossible. Literally, that's impossible. So, even if you take BASC's optimism of 5 years, well, things have been delayed by 2 years because there was very little, if any, development over COVID because places were shut down and places were just trying to survive. So they had made that announcement just before COVID. So even with BASC's optimism, we're still 5 years away, right? Because no progress has been made. With the cartridge industry saying that 5 years was impossible, I think we're probably going to be looking more closer to 10 years to properly have alternatives available. So, BASC making this decision with the other countryside organisations, which obviously wasn't with the agreement or understanding or the discussion with the cartridge industry, whatever their motives were, their execution was piss poor, and a lot of people are never going to forgive them for the way that they handled it. And to twist the knife a little bit more, if we go into, so it's the impact assessment, and within the impact assessment of this report, they talk about all the different proposals or all the different measures that they could bring in. And it doesn't mean that all of these are ones that they're actually going to advocate. A lot of them they shoot down in flames straight away. One of which being voluntary measures. So let's see how effective HSE thinks BASC plan, or the countryside organisation's plan was for voluntary measures and a voluntary transition away from lead. Effectiveness. In February 2020, a number of UK shooting and rural organisations produced a joint statement, BASC 2020, which commits to using alternatives to lead ammunition for the hunting of live quarry by 2025. This is a potentially effective option to reduce risks. However, voluntary agreements only work when all organisations and individuals who carry out the activity agree and are committed to change their behaviour. There is no single umbrella organisation to impose such measures. Those who disagree with voluntary measures, raise your hands now, may ignore them or set up their own membership organisations. For example, the Scottish Gamekeepers Association voiced their opposition when the announcement was made, Shooting UK 2021. In addition, some individuals who participate in shooting activities will not be members of a club or organised group and therefore would not be covered by this voluntary agreement. The sale of lead shot cartridges for other purposes such as clay pigeon shooting is not affected by the voluntary action, and its availability may be a temptation for people to carry on using it for hunting. So basically, it achieved nothing. It has, okay, maybe a bit in part because of COVID, maybe a bit in part for, little gobshites like me sticking the knife in BASC and telling them what fucking idiots they've been. But it's achieved nothing, right? All it has done is just turned the majority of shooters against them. And yes, they may be the largest single organisation with 150,000 members. Well, there's still 700,000 license holders, right? There are millions of airgunners, right? The BASC will make up less than 10% of all shooters when you take into account, license holders, airgun shooters, this, that, and the other. So, for them to come out and say, yeah, all of our members will switch, I think was probably a bit optimistic to think that that would completely change the industry and change where it's heading. So yeah, it wasn't particularly received well by the UK Reach. And then if you go down to this table, so this is an interesting table because you can see all the proposal that they were going through. Voluntary measures, partially effective, practical, yes, monitorable, partially enforceable, no. But you can see they, within the document as well, they were proposing physical measures. Now they've actually, this isn't something that's going to happen, but they were considering a lead tax. The reason that they decided not to do it was because, well, if you're going out there and you're spending £1,500 for a peg to shoot game, if your cartridges cost you twice as much, you're not really going to mind that much. So they were saying that really it becomes like it just makes shooting and certain ammunitions more elitist. But yeah, you can see all of the different options that they were considering, and also which ones, and this is the scariest thing. This is why they're going for it. It's the only one that's yes, right? So that this is where they've looked at what is going to be effective, what is practical, what's monitorable, what's enforceable, and it's not just pick one. They have picked a number of them to move forward with. The penultimate ninjas, guns that are not proofed for steel are usually okay with bismuth shot. It's expensive, but at least it's an option. Again, for game shooting, I don't think it's a huge issue. Yeah, okay, you've got your grassroots game shooters, the ones that do walk-up days and will maybe get a handful of birds, you know, but then they're only shooting a handful of cartridges, so really it's not a huge total price issue. The ones going and shooting 3, 4, 5, maybe even 1,000 bird game days, those sort of people don't really care. They will sit there and moan about the cartridge price, right? But when they turn up in their brand new Range Rover, you know that they're going to just pay the money for their cartridges and enjoy the game day, right? It's not really going to affect those people if the cartridges increase 2 or 3 times. What it's going to affect, certainly, again, I know this is not an outright ban, but if there's certainly more of a push and it becomes harder to use lead ammunition for clay shooting, you know, clay shooting, you shoot a lot more clays throughout the year than you may do game. Clay shooting is done by a wider variety of people from a wider variety of backgrounds, and the champions of tomorrow, you know, that have to start young. You know, like, let's look back when Amber Hill started. You know, if cartridges are 3-4 times the price, are the younger generations of shooters going to be able to twist their mum and dad's ear to buying them those cartridges? It's going to be an even bigger hurdle for them to be able to get into the sport. Would it be better to implement a cleanup of the ranges and playgrounds to reduce the lead exposure to the countryside? Yes, that is one of the things that they are proposing. This isn't just again, it's multifaceted. They're talking about, you know, bans and licensings and this, that, and the other, but they're also talking about a number of measures that rangers will have to adhere to and maintain themselves to a certain standard, and that will be, you know, techniques, or let's say certified measures of or methods of lead recovery. Probably how often they will have to recover the lead, what percentage of the lead that they are expected to recover, things like that. All at the moment it's done ad hoc. And something that's really interesting in regards to Bisley, let's find it. So I can't remember. I don't know what. A call for evidence information. So the BASC estimate the number of sites in GB to be around 400 outdoor shooting ranges, 280 registered clay pigeon shooting grounds, of which 178 have trap and or skeet, which are different types of clay pigeon shooting. But what's really interesting is the site estimates, so Bisley estimates approximately 5 million copper jacketed bullets are shot each year on their target ranges. These bullets are captured using either sand or rubber composites, which are screened. The range recovers 20 to 30 tons of lead per year, based on the average weight of a bullet being 7 grams. Again, some estimating and assumptions there. Gives a recovery rate of between 71 and 85% of the lead. So, you know, this is what they're going to be focusing on. This is a part of what they're focusing on. They're saying, okay, 71 to 85% of the lead is recovered. What they want is 90%. They want measures to be brought into place that is going to increase this number, right? And what they want to is bring in these measures and guidelines to get to that place. And then the Clay Pigeon Target Shooting Centre, which is also within Bisley, has a fallout zone which is covered by rough grass, heather, scrub and trees. It is screened every 3 to 5 years by scraping off the top 5 centimetres of soil and spinning it to remove the lead shot. The last time this was done, 340 tons of lead was removed for recovery. So yeah, you can't, it's like, it's bloody huge numbers, isn't it? You know. Oh, here we go. I actually missed, this is the first time again, I sort of skimmed through that. The UK PSA has reported on lead recovery at 4 of its clubs. One of these clubs operates 2 airgun ranges, 3 4-ball rifle ranges, and 4 shotgun ranges, using lead slugs on the airgun ranges, copper jacketed bullets on the rifle ranges, and lead shot cartridges on the shotgun ranges. On this range, approximately 750,000 rounds are fired per year, amounting to 3,500 kilos of lead. Information was not provided to allow a breakdown of this total value by ammunition type. So yeah, again, it's the shot pellets are captured using rubber curtains. If the shot falls to the ground for recovery, full-ball ranges have sandbanks with a recovery rate of 9. Woohoo! Go UK PSA. Right, this is your 95%. Can't really argue with that. So, you know, come on, NRA, catch up. But yeah, there's all these interesting interesting stats and figures in it, and it's really like the tip of the iceberg when you start delving into it. And this is why it's going to take a very long time to fact check it, to, you know, make sure that things are accurate and true, and to, you know, come out with a counter argument. Andy Carles, they do make an aluminium pellet, but it's lightweight. Of course, you can't. It's very hard to get something similar to the density of lead. Well, at the same price of lead. Nicholas Onions, hi Callum. What about muzzle loaders who use soft lead ball? What's the alternative? Love the show. Well, thank you very much for joining. And if you guys watching, if you're enjoying, hit that like button. Again, it does make a huge difference. Well, muzzle loaders, again, you don't do a lot of hunting with muzzle loaders these days, so it would come under sport shooting, target shooting. You should be fine. It's, again, they're not proposing an outright ban of the use and sale of lead ammunition for sport shooting. There are going to be exemptions. There are going to be potentially licensing and more measures brought in, and more restrictions and measures brought into place. What that's going to look like, I have no idea. I don't think anybody has that idea. This is what we're in the process of hashing out. That's what this consultation is all about. That's what this report is all about. And again, I can't stress enough that this report is not gospel, right? Of course, it's very likely it's going to be used very heavily to concoct more legislation, but this isn't the be all and end all. This isn't 100% going to happen. So they've put a load of proposals. The proposals are: we want to ban the use of lead ammunition for hunting in totality. We want to ban the use of lead in sport shooting, but actually we're going to have a number of exemptions and licensing. But nobody knows what they're going to license. They don't know how they're going to license, who's going to license it, or what that's going to look like, or what the exemptions are going to be. So yeah, overall though, I think it's pretty safe that people like muzzle loaders will still be able to continue doing it. They will be able to still use their lead. I'd be curious what the farmer would say to me firing steel pellets inside his cladding shed to remove rats and starlings. Yeah, that is going to get... Yeah, there's going to be so many pitfalls to it. And actually, there's probably going to be a lot of pitfalls that are, dangerous, like ricochet. You're going to have, even on clay grounds, there's ricochet risks that are reduced if you hit something with lead, but you hit something with steel, could pose some serious issues. So we did just touch on the UK PSA as a quick side note. If you fancy shooting a bunch of stuff that we don't get to shoot here within the UK, then I would highly recommend joining the UK PSA. So there was a post put in the group. I'm not entirely sure whether I'm allowed to show what's in the group. I mean, even though it's in a group, it's still, you know, it's public, but some people get their knickers in a twist. But I can read it because it is in the public domain now. So the UK PSA have worked with a number of regions to be able to get more shooting opportunities. They now have regions. They now have 3 regions where they have the chance of taking safety courses and training in handgun, PCC, which is pistol caliber carbines, and centerfire rifles. These are Northern Ireland, of course, Nizza, where you can do handgun only. There are opportunities in Poland where you can do handgun, PCC, and centerfire rifle, and even the Czech Republic where you can do handgun, PCC, and centerfire rifle. Connors is going to love me for saying this, but if you are interested in learning more, you can email training@ukpsa.org. Connors is going to kill me tomorrow. It's going to be brilliant. So yeah, you can drop him an email for once, or anybody from the UK PSA, the main UK PSA email. This is why I am pushing the UK PSA so much and have been for a number of years, is because actually the way that they are heading is opening up the sport. Look at what they've done with Nizza, along with, you know, NIPSC, and with Nizza itself, opening up Nizza to the rest of the to the UK PSA. UK PSA members can go over there, use it, and shoot handguns. And there's even matches available for UK PSA members to go over there and take part in. And not only do we have Nizza in Northern Ireland, we've got these areas or ranges in Poland, and these are agreements with the countries' regional directors. So it's not like they've just gone and found a few ranges and are like, oh yeah, if the Brits come over, we can give them a load of guns. This is with sort of permission and sanction of the regions themselves. So, you know, IPSC is all on board with it. The regions are all on board with it. This is all sanctioned above board, and provides a lot of opportunity to shoot other disciplines, to train and progress in those disciplines for guns that we can't have here within the UK. Yes, it's an absolute piss take that we can't own handguns, PCCs, and centerfire rifles. Of course, you know my spiel about the statistics and the evidence that doesn't support that banning a particular type of gun has any benefit or reduction in crime. Of course, we all know actually after the handgun ban, firearms offences rose, and still today the largest proportion of firearms offences are committed with a handgun. So it achieved fuck all, just like the voluntary transition away from lead. But the UK PSA is trying very, very hard to make it as easy as possible for people to do it. Yes, you still have to jump on a plane, but you know, they can't, at the moment, they're not in the position to sort of change the rules and change the laws. So we will see how that goes. But yeah, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to head out to Poland and Czech Republic and make use of these new agreements that they have. So yeah, if you're interested in doing the same, then you can join the UK PSA. Highly would recommend it. If you're in any way, shape or form interested in practical shooting, join it. They offer great, fantastic matches, training, and progression throughout practical shooting sports. Ravener, for hunting, I can absolutely see a lead restriction. It is a poison. Let's not beat about the bush on that. Restricting airgun pellets is a bit more of a question. Just mandate use of a bullet catcher. The issue with a bullet catcher is the hunting, but you're saying actually for airgun pellets, let's not do any hunting. But then that kills hunting with airgun pellets. And again, if you're shooting an animal and you recover that animal with the pellet, what's the harm? Lead-free pellet, and also, you know, it's this whole thing of, you can get very easily into libertarianism here, but provide people the risks, right? Provide people the knowledge. If you want to shoot a rabbit, shoot a squirrel with a lead pellet, or a pigeon or whatever, with a lead pellet or lead shot, and you know what the risks are of eating it, should it not be your free choice to be able to eat it? You know, like we let people smoke, right? We let people drink. We let people eat all kinds of nasty processed shit, right? Because you'd like to think that we live in a free society. We've been allowed to do things that harm us for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? As long as people are aware of the risks, should it not be their own decision of, you know, this whole, you know, it's very much my outlook and ethos on life. If you're not affecting anybody else, you should be able to do what the fuck you want, right? And that's my like sort of my review, my overall review on religion and maybe, let's say, more controversial topics. Like most of the time, it's I don't care, right? I don't care like what you get up to in your own time, what you go and do, what you want to believe in, what you want to practice. Fill your boots, right? But as soon as it starts affecting me, as soon as I'm not able to do what I want to do, because, you know, I might offend you, that's where we're going to have issues, right? So, you know, yes, should lead shot game be on the supermarket shelves, so that people may unknowingly be eating something that's toxic? You know, that I think is, you know, not sensible, right? But somebody that knows the risk, goes out there, shoots a pigeon themselves, breasts it, fries it, maybe picks out a few pellets. Like, what's, you know, so somebody wants to eat something that may kill them. We've been doing that for years, right? Just like look at McDonald's, for crying out loud. Can't you use still shot abroad? Then there would be no disadvantage. There'd be no I mean, I know what you're saying in terms of So you can use still shot abroad, right? So, you know, if you train with it here and you go abroad, and yeah, you would continue using the same ammunition. You wouldn't then have to get used to lead again. The issue is lead performs very, very well. That's why we use it. It's a very good material for shooting, right? And my point is, whilst you can continue using still shot abroad in a competition with what you're training and what you're used to, the other competitors from abroad will not be. And they will have a performance advantage because the shot that they are using is lead, which performs better than the alternatives available. So that's what I mean by the disadvantage on an international level. Of course, for 99% of shooters that are never going to shoot abroad, they're never going to shoot at a world level, yeah, it's probably not going to make the blind bit of difference. People that just do club competitions, whether that's clay shooting, whether that's you know, whether it's clay shooting, whether it's IPSC, whether it's gallery rifle, right? If everybody's using the same ammunition, if everybody's on the same level playing field, not an issue at all. But it is for the people that want to go and compete on the international stage and will be disadvantaged because they are using different ammunition and ammunition that is not as consistent. Oh, as a side note, I saw some of you are talking about ammunition, not just the fact of lead ammunition. Something that was very evident, I don't want to cause a panic buy or a scare, but something that was very evident at the Northern Shooting Show, the number one thing bought was ammunition and primer, or ammunition and components, mainly primers. A lot of the stands that I spoke to that had ammunition components, they were saying that was all people were buying, right? People really stocking up on primers. And, you know, we've been talking about ammunition shortages for a few weeks now. It's real. So I think we've been told we won't have another order, well, there won't be another supply of anything CCI for another year. There was another big brand of, I think, primers that basically what's in the country at the moment is probably going to be what's in the country for the next year. So as I've been saying, for any serious, you know, competitors out there, anybody that shoots regularly and you want to make sure, you know, you've got the ammunition to shoot, you should obviously, within your limits, within your allowed Of course, components, you're allowed to buy as many as you want, but I would make sure you are well stocked. I would make sure that you have, certainly if you're into reloading, if you've got reloading components, I think it would be worth pushing the button and investing in enough components to see you through the next year. Because once it's gone, if there's nothing coming into the country, you won't be able to get it. Or anything that you get is going to be ridiculously expensive. Callum, gold and lead are 1 proton apart on the periodic table. Surprised they have insisted we make that change. Well, that would be good. You know, just suddenly overnight it'd be like Jesus and the wine, right? You just give lead a bit of a rub and then suddenly you got gold. People really wouldn't want to be shooting their cartridges then, would they? William Tell, the argument behind the lead ban is far less about individual shooting being poisoned by less and far more about wider environmental pollution. The personal angle isn't going to alter anything. Yeah, no, completely agree. That's why I'm saying the restrictions and the measures should be brought into place on the ranges rather than on the individual shooter. It should be on where it's being shot, not necessarily who's shooting it. But then again, somebody going out on their farm firing off 10, 20 lead airgun pellets, is that really going to cause an ecological disaster? In the areas where there's significant discharge, there should be measures in place. You know, how far you want to go with that, be that game shoots, clay pigeon grounds, stuff like that. But again, like a lead, a stalker, like how many rounds will a stalker get off in a morning of stalking, right? Probably 1 if they're lucky. Like, why stop that? Like, I think it should be concentrated on mass areas of discharge. Like ranges, like clay pigeon grounds. That's where you have enough build up to start causing ecological damage. So, but and like the game shoots may get drawn into that a little bit, but stalkers, airgun shooters, they seriously can't produce that much to cause any sort of effect. Especially with all the stuff that's already in the ground, right? It's not like they're adding a huge amount to it. Read a medical article last week about a woman who ingested 1 6mm lead shot. She had significant health and cognitive decline. Lead poisoning is a real threat, and we won't win by pretending it's not. Yeah, again, I don't think you can take one case as we must do it. Absolutely, that people have been picking lead shot out of their pheasants for a long time with their teeth. Don't get me wrong, I take lead poisoning very, very seriously. That's why during a practical match, during a UK PSA match, I will be wearing gloves when I'm touching the plates, when I'm touching anything that has been shot at. Also, within, like, it's not like I go around holding my breath, but certainly straight after a stage, I'm very mindful of breathing in stuff at the end of down that's downrange, the lead particles and dust that are still in the air. And the only people that I know personally that have had any issues with lead poisoning are practical shooters, and it's purely down to resetting. It's touching equipment and plates barehanded. It's spending a lot of time downrange moving and repairing range furniture, even a lot of time over many years being a part of many different clear-ups. I understand the dangers of lead. I understand it's not a nice substance to be breathing in, eating, or being in contact with. Just need to make sure that it's a measured response, and maybe a complete ban of it is, even on the hunting side, is a bit of an overreaction and actually isn't needed. Domino's, thank you for joining in. Came in fairly late. Did Callum go over the studies done that shows the effect of all this lead that's causing environmental problems? No, that's actually been a repetitive point that I haven't been able to really dig in and look through that. If someone, I know people are saying go here and look at the medical effects. Yes, I don't dispute that lead has a very negative effect on you medically, but again, no one's been able to point me into the direction of this is where it breaks it down, of this is how bad it is with all that lead out there in the outdoors. These are the problems being caused. This is why we need to. Of course, I'm pretty sure it's within this report, which I will spend some more time going through and looking over. Yeah, refrain from touching openings in your body until you wash up. Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the first things that was drilled into me when I first started shooting. Before you leave the range, you go and wash your hands. You don't eat. You try not to eat at the range, and if you do, again, you go and wash your hands. So, I've known about the contact with lead, and I'm not one of these, no, we should just rub it all over our bodies, it's absolutely fine. I'm not one of those people. I just think a complete total ban is maybe a bit more of an overreaction. A bit, again, changing the subject slightly. I say slightly, completely. Neighbours has been pretty quiet recently, but they've come out with this. They've launched a gun surrender campaign, and actually the video that I'm going to show you in a sec with Field Sports Britain, they're engaging well, right? And they are targeting illegal guns, right? It's the video really does cover two stories in one with Field Sports. And they say, Field Sports were very good when they were quizzing them and getting them to say that, they are targeting illegal guns. They completely understand that law-abiding shooters aren't an issue. They're not of concern to them. They abide by the law. And, when you look at this table, nothing that's on that table is legal to own. So this isn't about lawful shooters here within the UK, okay, unless there's like an air pistol in there somewhere, which usually there is. They also, the problem with these surrenders, right, with these firearms amnesties, is the real people you want handing them in, the real gangsters, the people that are going and committing armed robberies. They don't give a shit. They want a gun. They've probably spent thousands of pounds getting the gun, or have smuggled it into the country with very unpleasant methods, right? The last thing they're going to do is walk into a police station and go, yeah, take it bruv. What they're actually more focused about is people with war trophies, and they talk about this quite a bit, and I believe the specific gun they were talking about was this Webley. What they're aiming for are people that may be in possession of a gun, that they're like, oh shit, they don't want to go to the police and say, I've got a gun, because, they may get prosecuted, so they end up shoving it in the back of a cupboard for years, and, this is what they're targeting. They don't want those illegal guns making it onto, the criminal markets, or falling their way into criminal use. So, yeah, in terms of the effectiveness of these sorts of campaigns, again, I don't think the real sorts of people that they want to be taking guns off of are going to surrender them. And of course it's illegal, of course people shouldn't be doing it, but the people that have an old war trophy shoved in a cupboard somewhere or shoved up an attic, is that really an issue? Right, okay, yes, they're breaking the law, yes, it's an illegal gun, and yes, they shouldn't have it, and people should always abide by the law, and I'm not in any way, shape or form advocating that anybody that currently has one of these trophies to hold on to it. But in terms of police resource and police time, going after those people, people with a war trophy up in their attic, they're not hurting anyone. They're not going out there and robbing people. The gun is completely, unassuming in that way, right? It's just an inanimate object tucked away. So, whilst I do understand that neighbours, when they're not trying to ban guns that have never been used in crime and necessarily trying to take other illegal guns that really have no likelihood of making them way into crime, when they're not doing that sort of shit, they are doing good work. They do lead to a lot of convictions. They are the sort of brain house of or the powerhouse of firearms conviction. It's through those guys that we get criminals in prison, we get people behind bars. So, fair play for that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good PR stunt. Yes, they take away a few guns from the street. Does that actually make the world a safer place? Again, the sort of guns that are being handed in by the sort of people that are handing them in, I don't think so. Their time could potentially be better spent going after those really hardened criminals that are going to stick a gun in your face at a post office. Well, also, I'm trying to think if they've got any pictures. No, because what they always love to do is go, look at all these scary weapons that we've taken, and there's an air gun, an air pistol, like an old brocock, all sorts of silly shit like that. But yeah, just something to be aware of. If you do happen to have any illegal guns, and you're not sure of how to dispose of them, there is this firearm surrender. Please make use of it. I don't know if I've talked about it before on the channel, but I was contacted by somebody who had found an old war trophy, right? And what they said to me is, well, I want to be able to keep it, right? I want to be able to, it's something that interests me. I want to collect it in a sense. Oh, this is all out of tilter. Let me end up ripping it off. I want to keep it. I don't want it to be destroyed. What do you recommend? And I'm like, well, first things first, you are in possession of an illegal firearm, right? And I was like, you can't just sit on this, right? You need to get something done immediately, because the risks are huge. And I think they were either a current certificate holder, or they had an application in, or they wanted to be a certificate holder. And I was like, look, if you get caught, regardless of your intent, if you get caught with an illegal firearm, no matter how you came into possession of it, you can kiss goodbye to becoming a certificate holder or maintaining your certificates, right? So think about this smartly. Is it worth not having your tickets to potentially be able to keep something? No. And I just said the best thing for you to do is to find a Section 5 dealer and immediately hand it over to them. It's then out of your hands. They've then got it. There's a chance that they may immediately want to destroy it. But once it's in the hands of somebody with lawful authority, that's when you can start asking them questions about, can you have it deactivated? Can it be, instead of destroying it, can you do this? Can you hold it for me? I may even want to do Section 7.3 and legally own it. All these things. So yeah, don't be tempted. If you are interested in your shooting, if you have or want to have a firearm certificate and you have illegal guns, it's just not worth the risk. No matter how unlikely you think you're going to, because it's tucked under that, dodgy floorboard up in the attic and that no one's ever going to check. Don't take the risk. It's not worth it. In other more positive news, we talked a little bit at the beginning of the stream. Of course, after the Plymouth shooting, certainly the likes of Devon and Cornwall and other firearms licensing departments, they went on a massive gun seizure binge. And again, I think it was Field Sports Britain that said it was authoritarian action due to police failings, really going over the top. And they've been following a number of stories of people from Devon and Cornwall that had their guns. You know, they went there and said, "We've come to take your guns," and they were like, "Oh, okay." And then they realised that it was a voluntary surrender, and that they could have potentially said no. Well, this chap here, what's his name? Gary Ivey. I believe this is one of the first people that had his guns taken away. Well, great news for Gary. He's got him back. I think the beginning of, that is a boot full of his guns. And he said as well, another bonus was that he, the guns were in good condition. They were actually looked after. They weren't rusty. They weren't damaged. What ammunition has he got? Small, what's that? CCI primers. Nice little stash there, and obviously a number of guns. So this is somebody that's gone. He didn't even get through the appeal process. Basically, he ended up having a negotiation with the police force. And what's absolutely sickening is he said that he spent £4,000, right? So he's not even got to appeal. Well, he put in his letter to appeal. He said he was going to appeal it, but it never went to court, right? He didn't even step foot in a courtroom, and it cost him £4,000 just in the negotiation process, right? Now, fortunately, Gary says he has insurance, and the insurance has agreed to reimburse him for the full amount. Again, cannot stress how important it is to have legal expenses insurance in the case of revocation or refusal. So £4,000, and you don't even go to court, right? God knows what it would have been if he'd have ended up in court. But hopefully this is going to set the trend. What I think is absolutely disgusting is that the police in a way have been proven wrong in Gary's situation, in his case, right? They've handed everything back. Where's the compensation, right? Where's the sorry, right? They've made an incorrect decision. They wouldn't be handing the guns back if their decision was correct and they felt that they could stand behind it, right? And this is again why you need to have all the protection you can have and all the support to call upon that you may need in these sorts of situations, because you're not going to get an apology from the police if they get it wrong. You're not going to get any compensation from the police if you get it wrong. Even if you win, even if you lose, what you're definitely going to end up with is a huge legal expenses bill. So hopefully this now, the appeals start to, either the appeals start to conclude or more shooters, and it sort of sets a precedent that Devon and Cornwall, not only did they fuck up giving that absolute loon his certificates back in the first place, they're going to then realise that they've also fucked up going around intimidating, pressurising and seizing all of these guns from lawful gun owners. And in Gary's particular case, they said that it was a false allegation made many years prior to them coming to seize his guns. That is the sort of thing that they're coming after you for. So all the people, and seriously, I'm going to start just laughing in people's faces when they do this next. All those people that say, this would never happen to me. Bullshit. Stop being such an idiot, because anybody at any point can make any accusation about anybody else. Right? There is nothing stopping anybody from making an accusation against you one day, right? You park your car slightly too close to your neighbours and they think, right, fuck him. You know, I'm going to phone the police and cause shit for him. They may not even know that you've got firearms, right? But somebody makes a vicious sort of vindictive complaint against you, you know, a fictitious vindictive complaint against you. That could all it takes for you to lose your licenses. So, you know, make sure you've got that legal expenses insurance. D Dirty. He got his gun back. Bet he didn't get an apology. Well, you're right there, my friend. Who had his guns taken? He's decided. My friend was one of the people who had his guns taken. He's decided to give it up. You know, again, I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. You know, like, no, fuck you. Like, no, you're wrong. Like, you know, even if I lose, I'm like, I can appeal. I have the right to appeal, so I'm going to appeal. I mean, that really is an indication of how weak Devon and Cornwall thought their case was, that they didn't even go to the appeal, right? Apparently they said they tried to negotiate and said, why don't you just reapply in a few months' time and we'll see how it goes. And he went back, and his barrister or his solicitor went back and were like, nah, fuck off, we want the guns back. And they gave in. So that, you know, it wasn't, they didn't even have a strong enough case to go to court, right? And yet still no apologies for taking them. No compensation. Absolutely ridiculous. Red flag laws in the US are very similar. Should never be a thing. Yeah, that's the thing, is it should be qualified complaints, right? Because anybody can make any complaint. When you're a gun owner, right, it's innocent until it's guilty until proven innocent, right? If someone makes a complaint against you, they take the guns and then we'll try and see if it's a valid complaint, right? And sometimes they don't even look into the complaint. They will use the complaint as gospel, right? This person said this about you. You're a firearms owner, so we have to err on the side of caution and assume that that's correct. And you're like, well, what about the validity of the person? You know, when did I supposedly do this? Was I even anywhere near them when this supposedly happened? And of course, there is the famous the famous story or fable or whatever, wives' tale of the shooter that he was having issues with his wife, was going to go through a divorce, knew that it was going to be a messy divorce, hence why he was divorcing her. And he knew that she was going to do something really shitty because he was a gun owner, right? So what did he do? He went and got all his guns and booked them into an RFD and got a receipt and put it in the safe. Lo and behold, wife ends up losing her shit. Ex-wife ends up losing her shit. Makes an accusation that he's threatened her with guns. Police come to take away the guns. They open up the safe, and here's that note saying that the guns were handed in weeks prior to when the, you know, alleged threatening took place, right? And as the story goes, apparently the wife ended up getting prosecuted for wasting police time, right? But, you know, props to the guy having proper foresight in foreseeing that. That's even if it's true, right? That's just one of the stories that have been told by many people many different times. It could just be one of those stories, but it stacks up, right? That is literally the only way to get out of a story like that, is to categorically be able to prove that it's incorrect. You know, how could I threaten her with firearms when they've been at the RFD for the last 2 months? You know, that seems like an impossibility to me. Yeah, okay. You know, but, you know, he did this, or they did that, or he said that. You know, that's more difficult to prove, and the police will, as you're a firearms owner, will always take the side of caution. Alexander Dale, that's a boss move and one I'll have to remember. Well, hopefully it's one you'll never need. James Luke, I'm 16 and looking to get a certificate when I'm older, and what you're saying about this is discouraging. Unfortunately it is. What I'm going to say is, if you're looking at getting a certificate for sport shooting, you're still going to be able to do it, right? This isn't a thing. This isn't going to be an outright stoppage of shooting sports. And this is, I think, one of the main takeaways from this is sport shooting with lead is not going to be banned, right? Sport shooting with any ammunition is not going to be banned. We're still going to be able to use lead for sport shooting. What that is going to look like, we don't yet know, but it is not going to be a complete ban. So I don't think you should necessarily be discouraged. You know, what we need is numbers. What we need is as many new people getting into the sport. So if you're thinking of getting a certificate, I mean, if you're 16, like, you can get a shotgun and firearm certificate now, right? You can't buy a gun until you're 18, but you know, if you've got a shotgun certificate, you can at least go to a playground and loan and borrow one. I think you can borrow one. Get your certificates now. Put them in. You know, start the process. At least join a club. If you're not already a member of a club, join a club now, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to meet people, know them. If you wait until you're 18, let's say, because that's when you can actually go out and buy guns. If you join a club now and you meet people, you're 2 years away. By the time you come to apply for your certificates, you're going to be a full member of that club. They're going to support you in your application, and there will be people in your club that you can put down as referees that you would have known for 2 years. So, you know, get into it. Start doing it. I don't like being a negative Nelly. This is obviously a huge bit of news for the shooting community. It's got to be talked about. It's not the best news out there, but we're still going to carry on, right? If the shooting community was put off by a few bans, some needless restrictions and legislation, we would have given up shooting a very long time ago. It's, you know, adapt and overcome, and I think that's one thing that certainly the UK shooting community is very good at, adapting and overcoming you know, very restrictive legislation to still enjoy the sport. Gun laws are something I flip-flop on a lot, but as left wing, I am genuinely leaning toward pro gun laws. What do you think the biggest problems are when it comes to pros and cons of gun laws? The pros and cons of gun laws. Consistency, really. I mean, you know, it depends where you're, you know, which country, right? The thing is about, you know, do we need gun laws? Yeah, I think we do. I think there are the pros of having gun laws. As I always say with our licensing system, the biggest pro is that there is a definite separation between legal and illegal. And when somebody does something illegal with an illegal firearm, it looks less negative on the lawful shooting community, because you can say they're not part of this community, they didn't go through the processes that we did, they weren't checked, they are a criminal that broke the law, you cannot tar us with that same brush. So, you know, I think that's one of the biggest pros, is giving that separation, and allowing the shooting community to go, no, you're not tarring us with that brush. The cons of firearms. What are the cons of gun laws? Oh God, how long have we got? I think that's a very hard thing to answer in a general sense. I think you'd have to look at either a specific country's gun laws and say what are the pros and cons of those specific laws, or a specific bit of legislation and say what the pros and cons of that bit of legislation is. I think the only general con of any law, not just like not just gun laws, any law, is removing people's freedom. And I don't mean that as in like a Second Amendment, like we should all be free men and this, that and the other, but by having laws you're removing choice. Now, of course, you know, there's a lot of idiots in the world, and I think removing the choices of some idiots is a very good thing. But you know, again, you can end up being very, you know, libertarian in this, you know, in this stance. But, you know, I think there are a lot of things nowadays, a lot of laws, a lot of legislations, a lot of restrictions that end up preventing things from happening that are of no consequence to anyone, right? They do no harm. There's no foul there. And slower we are becoming a more restricted society, and people are able to make less mistakes. You know, they make less of their own mistakes. And I think as society, yeah, I think the biggest con of laws in general, maybe even, you know, say gun laws, is people are losing the ability to think for themselves. When our laws bubble wrap us and wrap us up in cotton wool, we become a very brain dead society. When you don't have to think, you know, like, you know, Darwinism, you know, previously, you know, even not that long ago, if you weren't very smart, right, if you didn't think about what you were doing, you'd end up dead very quickly. And, you know, I think so. That's probably more of a generalized thing. Is legislation, over legislation, will, you know, leads to a brainless society. It leads to a society that can't think for itself, that can't do for itself. You know, the only way that you learn is by making mistakes. And if people aren't allowed to make those mistakes, of course, there's some mistakes that unfortunately have dire consequences. And, you know, there is a balance there. But you look at some of the legislation and some of the laws out there, and you're like, what is that even preventing? Right? That's just utter, you know, like the whole fucking thing. Like, perfect case in point. A packet of nuts may contain nuts. There is a bit of legislation that says a packet of peanuts must have may contain nuts written on it. Right? First of all, if you're paying for a packet of peanuts, I would hope that it's a pretty bigger certain than may contain nuts. Like, you can drop that may off, right? It contains fucking nuts. But you know, that's the sort of brainless. Like, in my world, in my way of thinking, if you're allergic to nuts and you scoff down a thing of Nobby's nuts because it didn't have may contain nuts written on it, I think you're doing the world a favour, right? It's, you know, that's just Darwinism, right? Only the smart will survive, and unfortunately, we're more and more removing Darwinism out of the equation. Domo, my question is: do we have laws that already cover this? Yes, right. The whole thing about we need to ban guns so people don't shoot each other. Okay, well, you know, it's already illegal to shoot each other. Right, it's already murder has been illegal for a very, very long time, right? You know, why are you concerned of whether they're doing it with a gun, with a knife, with a baseball bat, right? Murder is illegal, right? If somebody is willing to murder somebody, they are not going to give two shits about the gun laws. So yeah, like that I get. Again, I am a fan in some ways of some laws. I am a fan of our licensing system for many, many different reasons. Of course, there are laws that I would like to see changed. There are, you know, our guidance I would like to see changed in some way. Even our licensing system I would like to see changed in some ways. Not just so we can own handguns and full-bore semi-automatic rifles, but I think there's some huge efficiencies to be gained. I think to make it even more effective at the purpose that it's been there, not just as a selfish gain for the shooting community. Henry, do you know when the next BASC timeline for applications will be released? It took Suffolk over 2 years from my first application and 10 months from me reapplying after they closed it. Fucking hell. No, I don't know. Well, they do it once a year, and I think it's probably like I think it's towards the end of the year that they do it. So I think it's going to be a few months yet until that table comes out. But yeah, before you guys all head off and I head off, make sure you've hit that like button. If you've enjoyed the stream tonight, please do subscribe. I'm not exactly sure what time. Maybe I'll make it a little earlier, maybe 8:30. Maybe go down, I'll compromise a little bit. We'll go to 8:30 for future streams. You know, that extra hour really does make a big difference for me. But you guys didn't mind the later start time. But yeah, let's go for 8:30 from now. See how that works out, how that goes. Yeah, 8:30. You know, tend to do an hour and a half, 2 hours. So 8:30 till 10 and a half. That should work. But yeah, everyone, I really appreciate you guys joining and getting involved. A lot of you guys have been getting pretty active in the chats. If you've only just joined us, this will be available on the channel to watch back. It gets auto uploaded to YouTube, so you can watch it back to your heart's content. There's loads of stuff. I've still got loads of American footage to come out. The full auto day, TACOM, Callaway Ballistics, the whole Kentucky trip. I am going to be doing a whole video on filling out that consultation. Again, I will get the link for you guys. Please do go and at least have a look at it. And if you feel like you're confident in filling it out, please go and fill out that consultation. It's going to be really every shooter needs to have their voice heard with this. And of course, I'm going to be watching the responses of BASC and the NRA very, very closely when it comes to lead. But I hope you all have a absolutely fantastic week ahead. Lots of shooting. I'm actually going to be at Basildon shooting at the level 3 Southern Area Mini Rifle Championship. There's where's my phone? Oh no, I've got something cool to show you. I think I've left my phone downstairs. Anyway, there's going to be something new that I'm going to be using for the match. So you're going to have to just watch this space. But yes, have a fantastic shooting a lead shooting week, shooting field week ahead. And yeah, stay safe. Again, thank you for joining. Hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed. And of course, as always, guys, hope to see you soon.